Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dan Peterson, Director of the City of Prospect Heights Building and Development Department. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Prospect Heights Planning Zoning Board of Appeals. We are located here at 8 North Elmhurst Road, City of Prospect Heights, to conduct business this evening. First order of business, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. Jen, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Okay, Chairman Dash is absent by prior notice. Commissioner Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Taman is absent by prior notice. Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Mellon.
Here.
And Commissioner Stewart.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. 5 out of the members are here, establishing the quorum for this evening. As Chairman Dash is absent by prior notice, the board will have to select a member of their own to be Chair Pro Tem for this evening.
I would like to make that motion. Commissioner DeGraff, I would like to make Pro Temp of Bruce Mellon.
I'll second.
Mashi Kanta seconds. Jen, can you call a roll, please?
Of course.
Voice for roll call vote.
Commissioner Stewart.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
And Commissioner Mellon.
I better say aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Chair Pro Tem Mellon, the meeting is yours.
Good evening, everybody. The first item of business is consideration of the 6/25/2020 PZBA meeting minutes. Are there any comments from any of the commissioners, changes or corrections to the minutes as presented?
This is Commissioner Sayward, and I just wanted to make the note that possibly we should be noting on these minutes that there's Zoom meetings. So instead of it just saying it was called to order at the Village Hall, we may want to clarify that these are being held as Zoom meetings for the record.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sayward. So noted.
Are there any other comments or corrections at this time? If not, can I have a motion to approve the 6/25/20 PZBA minutes as presented with the modification as recommended by Commissioner Sayward?
So moved.
I'll second.
Jen, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
And Chairman Pro Tem Mellon.
Aye. Okay. The next item of business on our agenda is old business. However, there's only one item of old business on the agenda, which is PZBA case number 20-02, recommitted by council, is Crown Castle and the cell phone tower case. The applicant is here.
But we were going to see about moving this one.
Right. So do I need to get the applicant's permission, or?
You can, for the record, you can ask the applicant if they would agree to.
I understand you discussed with council moving to third on the agenda behind the new business. Are you agreeable with that?
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and skip old business for now and move straight to new business. So, excuse me. So the first case of new business on the agenda tonight is case number ZBA 20-11V. The applicant is Lucas Borkowski. His address is 905 Edward Road, Prospect Heights. And the description of the request, the applicant is seeking the following variations: to allow a 37-foot recreational vehicle in excess of the 32-foot maximum allowed for parking and storage of a recreational vehicle per section 5-8-4B3, and to reduce the required side yard setback from 5 foot to 1.5 foot for the construction of a driveway to access the rear yard as required by section 5-8-2. So with that, can I get a motion to open the public hearing on ZBA case number 20-11?
Also move.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kempa,
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward,
Aye.
and Chairman Mellon.
Aye. So before we hear from the applicant tonight, on the last Zoom meeting, something that worked out well, if you're here to speak to this particular case tonight, if you would be kind enough to modify your name on the Zoom and put a star next to it, we will know that you're here to speak to this case, and everybody that has a star next to your name, we will, it makes it easier to find you as we are trying to bring up the public speakers. So if everybody that's here to speak to this case would be kind enough to do that, that would be great. In the meantime, Director Peterson, do you want to present the application?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Pro Tem. This case before you was a situation where the applicant had applied for a building permit to construct a driveway in his yard. The original permit was compliant with our codes and standards. However, upon inspection, it was determined that he had encroached into the required side yard due to some mechanical equipment that was not highlighted on the original plan. During the application process, it was disclosed that the purpose of that was to access the rear yard so we could store a new fifth-wheel camper that was in excess of the 32 feet allowed by our code. In fact, it's 37 feet in length. So he's seeking two variations tonight. The first variation is to get approval to store or park into a 37-foot recreational vehicle in his rear yard. And then secondly, to seek relief of the 3.5-foot encroachment into the required 5-foot side yard variation. That is the application before us.
Okay, I see Mr. Borkowski is here. Patrick, if you would unmute Mr. Borkowski. Mr. Borkowski, do you swear the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Patrick, he's muted.
Mr. Borkowski,
he has to unmute himself. He's manually muted it. I can't unmute it.
Great, thank you, Patrick.
He just did.
Now, Mr. Borkowski, go ahead.
Yes, I do.
Okay, the floor is yours to present your application.
I appreciate everybody's time tonight. My name is Luke. I'd like to introduce my wife, Ursula.
Good evening, everyone.
First of all, I would like to thank everybody for everybody's time this evening. Our family owns a camper for the last few years, and we just purchased a new one. We were not aware of the law in Prospect Heights that it has to be a 32-foot camper. So, long story short, we asked the city if we could get the driveway back of our property, just to get the camper out of the view of the neighbors, and so the kids could play safely, and so it could be behind the property, and it wouldn't disturb all the neighbors. And as Mr. Peterson said, I would move the camper to the back, and I would park it. I would actually store it 5 feet away from my neighbor's side. And I also would plant evergreens to block the view of the camper. to make all my neighbors happy. I just need the access to get into my property of 1.5 feet versus the 5 foot that is required by the city because of the AC units that I have inside of my property. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brookhouse, is there anything else you'd like to add tonight? Or if not, I'll open up to other members of the public to speak to this case tonight.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you. So, is there anyone here that wishes to testify? I see a gentleman by the name of Rick with a star next to his name. I don't see anybody else on that has a star. So, Rick, if you're here, are you here tonight to speak to this case?
You may have to hit *6 if he's on the phone.
Rick, if you can hear me, hit *6 if you're on the phone.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yes.
Rick, first I need to swear you in, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And can I get your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Rick Stefani. I live at 910 Edward Road. I'm just across the street and down a couple houses from Luke.
Could you spell your last name for the record, please?
Stephanie.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Rick, the floor is yours.
Well, the only thing that I had to say is that I have no problem with this whatsoever. The property has been improved. The camper will be in the back. The driveway is an improvement, and everything that they've done as far as landscaping has done nothing but improve the neighborhood. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. I see Jill Stephanie is on the line with a star next to her name. Patrick, if you could unmute Jill Stephanie.
Yes, I also live at 910 Edward Road.
Can I swear you in first, please? Do you swear the
Certainly.
testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Okay, Jill, and can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Jill Stefani, 910 Edward Road, Prospect Heights.
Go ahead, Jill. The floor is yours.
From the standpoint on the variance and the concerns raised with the variance, I have no issues with what's being requested here.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that tonight? If not-
I would also concur that what they've done with that property and the improvements they've made to it in the time that they've owned it do nothing but increase the value of all the properties in this neighborhood.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else here that would like to speak to this case?
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else's name with a star next to it. Patrick, is there any other way for somebody to get our attention when they're muted? Okay, if there's no other testimony from the public tonight, I'll open the floor to the commissioners.
I'd like to make a motion to open up the floor to the commissioners.
No, that's fine. It's still under public hearing, so we can just move into questions or discussion at this time before we close the public hearing. Do you have any questions of the applicant?
Sorry, I don't have my chairman pants on totally yet, so still working on it. So, but we can go ahead and ask questions now without a further motion.
I had a question. This is Commissioner Patel. Two questions I have for the petitioner. One, are you trying to get the variance because you do not want to move the mechanicals on the side of the house? Is the first question. And secondarily, I got your petition with the signatures for all your neighbors, but I would assume the most important neighbor is 907 because they're the ones that you're encroaching into their side of the lot. What is their take on this?
So, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go
Yes.
ahead.
So I talked to my neighbor, and I talked to Mr. Peterson. I understand my neighbor was over at the building department, and we came to a consensus that I'll build a driveway going back towards my property, and I'll move the camper 5 feet away from the property line. It will make everybody at the same page, and I will follow the rules of Prospect Heights to store it. And the other way, it will cost me a fortune to move the AC units from one side of the property to the other because of the location of the coils and the furnaces. I have two ACs in the house, and on the other side, I only have 9 feet. And from what I know, there's a setback on the other side that I can't put anything add on to the existing of the house. That's what I have. That's what I talked to Mr. Peterson with.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners tonight?
This is Commissioner Sayward. So we have, my video on. So we have certain standards that we have to comply with as to whether or not we can approve a variance. And so it looks like 3 of them, one being special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, which would justify getting a variance. However, I don't see the land, the structure, or your building per se as being a special condition. It seems that your hardship has actually been created by your purchasing an RV that is longer than what's accepted to be stored on your property. So the hardship really it really hasn't been created by the circumstance. It's created by yourself by purchasing the RV. The other standard that does not seem to me to be met was the proposed variation will not alter the essential character of the locality. I think that the reason a limit of the 32 feet had been put in is because it can substantially impact visibility in your neighbors and what they're seeing. I understand you have a fence and you're going to screen it, but my guess is that it's not just the length of it, it's also the height, where a 37-foot trailer would probably be 12 to 14 feet, I'm guessing. So a fence isn't going to conceal it, and shrubbery certainly won't conceal it. So although I sympathize with your situation, it doesn't seem that by the standards that we have that you would merit a variation, in my opinion.
Are there any other comments from the commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Is that Commissioner Machi Kempa on the motion and Commissioner DeGraff on the second?
Yes.
Patel, I think, or maybe.
Oh, Patel, Neil. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jen, roll call vote to close the public hearing.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
And Chairman Mellon.
Aye. I'd like to, I need a motion to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards part of the official record for the application. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved, Commissioner Kempa.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Okay, and then, would somebody like to, make a, motion tonight, to either approve or deny, the two variances being requested in this application?
For the record, we should address this as two separate motions. The first variation for the recreational vehicle, and the second one would be for the side yard setback.
My apologies. So can I get a motion from one of the commissioners to allow the variance of a 37-foot recreational vehicle in excess of the 32-foot maximum allowed for parking and storage per section 5-8-4B3 of the ordinance?
Also move.
I'll second.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Roll call. Okay. Commissioner DeGraff.
No.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
No.
Commissioner Saywert.
No.
And Chairman Mellon.
No.
Motion fails 1-4.
With that being the case, can I get a motion to reduce the required side yard setback from 5 foot to 1.5 foot for the construction of a driveway to access the rear yard as required by section 5-8-2?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Sure thing. Commissioner Saywert.
No.
Commissioner Mellon. Or I'm sorry, Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
No.
And Chairman Mellon.
No.
Motion fails 2-3. This will be up on the August 10th, I believe the August 10th City Council meeting. Mr. Barkowski, that will be at 6:30 p.m. It will be a Zoom format. I will forward you the login information. You can explain your position, but the council will be receiving a negative recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals on both variation requests. If you'd like to give me a call between now and then, you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan.
Yes.
I think the first meeting in August is always canceled, so it may not be to the end of the month, the second meeting.
No, we will be having a meeting on the 10th.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you for that, Patrick.
No problem.
Okay. Our second case of new business tonight is case ZBA 20-12. The applicant is Jay Brizzalara, owner of the property at address 1421 North Rand Road in Arlington Heights. Description of the request is a special use permit to operate a 2,730 square foot sit-down restaurant with outdoor dining in the B2A General Commercial District per 5-7-3C of the City of Prospect Heights zoning code. With that being said, can I get a motion from one of the commissioners to open the public hearing on case ZBA 20-12?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sayward,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa,
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff,
Aye.
and Chairman Mellon.
Aye. And just like the last case, if you're here to speak to this, please go ahead and put a star next to your name. It would really help us out to identify folks that are here to speak to this case. So with that being said, I will hand over the floor to Director Peterson.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mellon. This evening, the new owners of 1421 North Rand, the Brizoleros, they purchased that restaurant, which was formerly Nico's, Gyros, Hot Dogs, and Drive-In. The applicant is proposing a formal sit-down restaurant, bar, and outdoor seating, changing it more to a full-service dining facility than just a hot dog and Gyros facility. That being said, for our ordinance, as the use is with the applicant and not with the property, this being a new applicant, new user, will be seeking a special use, which is a permitted special use in the B2A district of the city. Thank you.
Is the applicant here tonight?
Yes, I'm here. I might be showing up as Gary.
Okay.
This is Jay Brazil.
Can you go ahead and say your, well, first, do you swear the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Jay Brazilera, I live at 207 East Marion in Prospect Heights, but the property address is 1421 North Rand Road, Arlington Heights.
Jay, the floor is yours to present your application tonight.
Yeah, pretty much what Dan just said. We're just looking to open a full-service restaurant with some bar seating and outdoor dining at the old Nico's location. Our chef, Terry Park, has a established restaurant in downtown Arlington Heights, but he's looking for a second location. So that's what we're going to use this location for.
Anything else you want to add on the case?
I don't think
and
so.
Any suggestions?
Jay, promote yourself. When are you going to be opening? What's the menu look like?
Okay.
There's a chance
Sorry.
to get the first word out.
Okay, so well, we're doing a total renovation of the place. So pretty much nothing was to code, so there's nothing we're keeping in there besides the 4 exterior walls. We're going to do a spin-off of Terry's existing food. So he has a Korean restaurant. We're going to do a little bit Korean, a little bit American, approachable. So we're looking at like fried chicken, chicken wings, some rice dishes, noodle dishes, bulgogi, poutine, things like that. A lot of shareable items. He makes steamed buns too that everyone seems to love. And so we're even looking at doing those as a lunch special for high schoolers. But yeah, it's going to be a total renovation. So I think it'll be a nice facelift for the building. I went to the building, I went to Nico's forever growing up. So I've always liked it there. So that's why I care about the property a lot too. So that's pretty much all I got right now.
Jay, when are you planning on opening?
Once we get building permits, I'm anticipating about 2 months of work. So we don't have those permits yet, but we hope to be applying soon.
Very good. Is there anything else you want to add tonight? Otherwise, I'll open the floor to the public.
I don't think so.
All right, thank you very much. I do not see anybody on the call tonight on the Zoom meeting that has indicated that they are here to speak to this case. Patrick, I don't know if there's a way to maybe unmute everybody and just see if there's anyone here to speak to this case before muting them back, please. Yes, if there's anybody that wants to speak to this case, please say so now. Otherwise, I'll open the floor to the commissioners for questions of the applicant.
With the outdoor, this is Commissioner Kempa. With the outdoor seating, is that how do we look on parking spaces?
So we'll be at about just under 3,800 total square feet with the indoor and outdoor space. And we have 39 parking spaces drawn up, so we meet that requirement +1.
Got it.
I have a question also on the outdoor dining. You mentioned in your application that you have about 40,000 cars going through that intersection. Is there plans to buffer that outdoor seating from the noise on Rand Road? Just to make it.
Yeah, so our thought now is to do a like a brick garden wall, and then we're gonna see how much that reduces the noise and maybe look at we do some sort of structure. I know we have up to 6 feet, I believe. So if we do like glass type paneling to additionally lower the sound into that area, we will. We don't want to block the view of it though, because we like that visibility for people to see that we have that outdoor space too.
I'm really excited about the proposal. I think the description of the restaurant you gave is going to be great. So I think it's going to be a great addition to that corner. I have another question for, I guess it's Director Peterson. You mentioned a gaming area. So I was just wondering if you could clarify the process to obtain a video gaming license. Is that an application to the state or to the city council, or how does that happen?
That is a great question, Commissioner Sayward. The city of Prospect Heights is a non-home rule community, so we cannot regulate or issue the gaming licenses. All we can do is regulate the special use for the sit-down restaurant, which then drives the liquor license that the owner is establishing. Once he's established and has his liquor license, then he can apply to the state for the gaming, which is, the council has looked at other places. As long as it's ancillary and supportive of the primary use, that's been very favorable.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Commissioner DeGraff. I do have a question back on the gaming, if possible. If gaming is so approved, would there be some type of a partition where the high school kids wouldn't be able to get to it, or I think there is ordinance is from the state and maybe also for our jurisdiction to separate that to make it where kids can't get in there under 21.
Yes, we currently have plans to have one full wall blocking off one side of the entrance. The other side, we're still deciding if we're going to go full wall or half wall, but there'll be walls on each side of the entrance. So it will be, they won't be able just to wander in there. We're going to obviously supervise that too.
Good, thank you. Hey, we look forward to having you there.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is Commissioner Mellon. I'd like to also, welcome you to the neighborhood, and we're very excited to have you. I did have one concern on the application, and that was related to parking. While the drawing that you provided, Mr. Brazola, meets the requirements of the ordinance, I think geometrically there's some awkwardness to this drawing, particularly the parking stalls immediately adjacent to Rand Road. If you were traveling northwest on Rand Road and made a right and wanted to get into one of those parking stalls, you'd basically do a 180-degree turn. I would encourage you to work with staff to maybe work on a better configuration for the parking stalls, because that 180-degree turn off of Rand Road is going to require someone to go real slow, and going slow on Rand Road is probably not a good idea. So, and if geometric changes can't be adapted here to what you've shown, I think it would be appropriate to assign those as employee parking, so that way, you know, you have the ability to control the folks that are going in and out of those stalls. That was really my only concern on the application. Otherwise, I'm very excited to see what you're bringing to the city. So.
Okay, yeah, those are good suggestions. So thank you for those.
I have one additional.
Anybody else?
I do have one additional. Yeah, this is Commissioner DeGraff. I have one additional question. Obviously, we're experiencing a pandemic, and at outdoor seating, will you make any type of provisions to possibly put some heat in there so you can at least use it on during the fall and winter months? That way, you know, it doesn't totally kill your business.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about getting the outdoor heaters, or possibly looking at doing some sort of enclosure on it to really, get the most use out of it throughout as much of the year as possible. We don't have a definite plan for that, but it's something we've been discussing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners?
One other comment for Director Peterson, and that's on the Exhibit 6, the zoning review. You had the application noted as a sit-down restaurant with a drive-through, and that's also what you had for your conclusion. So before we put this into the record, you might want to correct that, because I'm assuming a drive-through is not anything in the works.
Thank you very much. That is correct. It's supposed to be for a sit-down restaurant, and it's supposed to be in the B2A general district. Thank you very much.
Where was that? That was in your staff comments?
Yes.
All right. If there are no other comments from the commissioners, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing on application ZBA 20-12.
Also move.
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Sayward and Commissioner DeGraff.
That is correct.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Now that the public hearing is closed, I would like to entertain a motion to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards part of the official record for the application with the modifications that Commissioner Sayward just recently pointed out.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
That was
DeGraff and Kempa.
DeGraff and Kempa.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Okay. Is there anything else?
A motion to recommend approval.
Okay. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'd like to entertain a motion based on the testimony and evidence presented this evening that the standards for this application have been met, and recommend that the City Council approve the special use permit as presented tonight.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call, please.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. So the special use permit is, goes to City Council with a 5-0 recommendation.
On August 10th, and Jay, let's touch base on Tuesday.
Okay.
Just to talk about this a little bit on that parking plan.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mr. Brazel.
Thank you very much.
Brazelar.
Thanks.
All right. So that is all of the new business we have on tonight's agenda.
Yes.
So then, with that being the case, I would like to move back to old business. Our old business tonight is, let me get my little spiel, guys, so let me do this right. Is ZBA case 20-02, Crown Castle, represented tonight by, I didn't get your name, sir. Carl Camelucci. And the address is 10 East Cam McDonald Road in Prospect Heights. The request is consideration of special uses and special use and variations to section 5-3-15G to allow the construction of a wireless communication facility, and section 5-6-1B seeking a height variation of 5 feet from 110 feet to 115 feet high communications tower on the property commonly known as 10 East Cam McDonald Road, Prospect Heights, Illinois, in the city's R1 single-family residential district. Do you want to go over this before we open the public hearing?
Director Peterson here. Thank you, Chairman Mellon. This case was remanded back in early March, just prior to the executive order of Governor Pritzker and Stay at Home, for consideration of and to rehear the case to establish a record. At that time, we were trying to schedule special meetings. Things couldn't get done, and with the amount of interest in this, there was some delay in trying to get this hearing set. Subsequently, the applicant has requested that we address this, and which they're right, and we scheduled this hearing. The notice went out for a variation request of up to the original of up to 115 feet because the exhibits at the time showed a tower of 112 feet, which the applicant had originally verbally withdrawn at the public hearing. However, due to that exceeding what the previous 1998 height variation allowed, we noticed. However, tonight, the exhibits presented by the applicants that came in after the notice do reflect, and they will testify to the fact that they will meet the 110 feet height limitation of the 1998 variation request, and therefore do not need a height variation. So tonight we will be considering the special use for the telecommunications tower at the location. Thank you very much.
So there is no longer a variance request on the height of the communications tower. 110 foot is the application.
That is correct.
Okay. So, thank you, Director Peterson. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing on case ZBA 20-02, or reopen the case ZBA 20-02?
Also move.
I'll second.
General call vote, please.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa. Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Okay, so with that being the case, Mr. I am so sorry. I need to get your name in front of me. Mr. Camelucci is here tonight. Representing the applicant, if you would state your name and address for the record.
Of course. My name is Carl Camalucci. I'm a lawyer with the tax law firm in Chicago, here representing the applicant, Crown Castle.
Mr. Camalucci, do you swear the testimony you're going to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Before we get started, on behalf of Crown and myself, I just want to thank you and city staff, especially Dan and the city attorneys, for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We understand that in the COVID-19 era, it's very difficult to hold meetings like this. It's not business as usual. It takes a lot of work, a lot of planning, a lot of effort, and we very much appreciate it. We're here tonight before you with an application that you're already familiar with, of course. But essentially, you know, we're here seeking an amendment to an existing special use permit. The existing special use permit already allows a wireless telecommunications facility on the property. And so the amendment is just to approve the design of a replacement tower to replace the existing tower for the purpose of allowing the co-location of 3 wireless carriers rather than the existing one. But before we get into all the detail on that, just wanted to walk through a few items to sort of provide some context, because this application has some history to it, and bring us all up to the present day. First, I just want to talk a little bit about Crown Castle's approach in general to its business and to applications like this. As you can imagine, Crown Castle owns and operates facilities like this all over the country, many, many of them. And so it's critically important to Crown Castle to have good working relationships with the communities in which it operates, and it works very hard to build constructive relationships, to collaborate, to address the reasonable concerns of residents whenever possible, to be a responsible neighbor, and to create long-term partnerships that benefit both Crown Castle and the community. And I think when we go over the history of this application, it'll show that Crown has followed this approach with respect to this proposed tower. So just to go over that history a little bit, Crown filed its first application for a replacement tower at this site on March 25th, 2019. And there we go. Okay, so we've got the PowerPoint up now, so I think we're on slide 4.
Patrick, slide 4, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I was saying, the first application that Crown filed for a replacement tower at this site was filed on March 25th, 2019, so well more than a year now. It was heard before this board on April 25th and May 23rd of 2019. And there was a lot of concerns expressed by the community and board members about the appearance of the monopole. That initial application was for a monopole design, a pole with 3 antenna arrays on it. And so in keeping with its approach to try to address community concerns and build constructive relationships, Crown voluntarily withdrew its application and sought to redesign the pole in a manner that would try to address those concerns. And so, and in a manner that would screen the pole and antennas from view specifically, because those were the aesthetic concerns were among the concerns expressed at the time. So as a result of that effort, Crown filed its second application on December 23rd, 2019. And that application is the application that's before you today. Well, first,
Next page, please, Patrick.
sorry, thank you. I'll remember to cue Patrick up on those.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Patrick. So that initial application called for the monopine design. The purpose of the monopine is to provide a design alternative that would screen from view the pole and the antennas and hopefully address the concerns about aesthetics. That was heard at January 23rd meeting of this board. It was considered by the City Council on March 9th of this year and referred back to this board. And at those at the last PZBA meeting, there was some discussion about height and whether Crown really needed to, have a few extra feet compared to the existing pole. And at that meeting, Crown's representative agreed verbally to withdraw the height variation and to have the height of the tower comply with the existing height requirement of the existing special use permit and variations that are granted for the current location. And that's what's before you tonight. I know this matter was noticed up at 115 feet because it was uncertain whether we'd be able to accommodate a 110-foot design. But in the interim, we've determined that it is possible to have a 110-foot design which complies with the height requirements of the existing special use and variations. And the plans that we'll look at a little bit later on in this presentation will show 110 feet all in, including the antenna. So the only thing that's before you tonight is an amendment of the special use permit. But again, I think this is illustrative of Crown's approach, which is trying to address concerns whenever possible. And we also heard through the process that there was concern about the appearance of the monopine too. Although Crown intended it to address the initial aesthetic concerns, people had concerns about the appearance of the monopine. So now at the city council meeting, Crown offered to do either design. The monopine is actually more expensive to build and maintain for Crown than the monopole. It was offering that option to try to accommodate the concerns. But if people prefer the monopole, Crown is willing to build the monopole. And so what you'll see in the materials that we'll be talking about a little bit later is that both design alternatives are before this board today, so that either of them can be considered by you, and either of them can be considered by the City Council, and Crown will be willing to do either one. So that takes us through today's date. Patrick, I'm going to go to the next slide now, if you please. Okay, so we thought it would be helpful to review some of the matters that we discussed at the first public hearing. Not in great detail, we're not going to go blow by blow through all the same stuff that we already discussed, just to refresh our memory. The materials that were submitted to the previous public hearing remain part of the public record, and they remain, much of it remains relevant, but we wanted to so one of the main points that was discussed last hearing, still relevant today, is that there are coverage gaps in this area experienced by multiple wireless carriers. And in the record, which were submitted last time, are coverage maps from multiple carriers showing that in the location around where this property is, there are deficiencies in the coverage. We also have affidavits and letters from the carriers to that effect. And we also had at the previous hearing testimony from a radio frequency engineer to that effect. So there are coverage gaps. And the testimony and affidavits and letters from the carriers also established that a tower at this location that would allow additional carriers to co-locate at this location would address those coverage gaps by providing an antenna in the place where the gap is. And if you go to the next slide, Patrick, this is just to illustrate graphically how an additional tower in a location where there's a coverage gap helps address the gap. And this is kind of intuitive, but we thought it would be helpful. When there's too much space between sites, it creates the coverage gaps because the signal can't reach the area in between. Then Patrick, if you go to the next slide, please. And then click through one more time, please. Oh, I guess it was kind of hard to see on the screen, but when you add the tower in the middle, it fills in the coverage. The signals are able to reach the entire area. So Patrick, if you go to the next slide now, thank you. So here's a couple of other items that to review from the last hearing. The property in question where the proposed tower is to be built is the only viable location where new antennas can address the coverage gaps. And that's in part because the city has few locations where towers can be built, because it's a highly residential area with very few commercial areas where you can build a tower like this. And it's also because it's almost completely developed. There isn't, you know, lots of just raw vacant land available where you can come in and build a new structure. And Patrick, if you move to the next slide, please. Slide, please. Oh, there it is. Thank you. The aerial view here, in the blue box, it shows, you know, the general location of the existing property and the existing tower and the area around it. You can see from this that the highly residential area around it doesn't provide any locations for a new tower that would be appropriate. And really, the existing location is one of the only locations where a tower like this can be built. There was also testimony at the last hearing that Crown tried to approach some of the other commercial property owners in the small commercial area around this intersection to see whether one of those properties could be used as an alternative location for wireless facilities, and they were unable to reach an agreement on a lease deal with any of those property owners. So the existing location with the existing lease is the only feasible location to add antennas and address the coverage gaps. Patrick, if you could please go to the next slide. The next slide is a picture that was in the previous presentation. It's a view of the zoning map of the city, and superimposed on that zoning map, here it is, are black circles around the perimeter with a red circle in the center. The black circles around the perimeter show other existing wireless towers that provide service to the area, and in the center is our existing tower. And this further demonstrates that this location is really the only feasible location to add antennas and address the coverage gaps, because it's located, you know, right in the middle of where all these other existing towers are, and most of the area around there are, you know, purely single-family residential homes where you can't build a tower. Moving on to the next slide, please, Patrick, and I can start discussing it before it switches forward. Even if another location were viable, expanding at an existing location where a tower already is also important because it reduces the proliferation of new towers. If you had one antenna on every tower, and every time you needed to add antennas to address a coverage gap, you had to build a whole new tower in a whole new location, you would have many more towers everywhere, and that's not a desirable outcome. And so co-locating additional antennas at an existing location where a tower already is actually minimizes the you know, whatever negative aesthetic effect and other things that people might dislike about the towers by keeping the number of towers down. And this is consistent with the city zoning code. The city zoning code encourages the co-location of antennas on each tower, requiring at least 3 carriers to share each tower, and the purpose of that is the same. It's so that instead of having 3 towers with 1 antenna, you've got 1 tower with 3 antennas. And so this proposal is consistent with those concepts. Moving to the next slide, this is just a review of certain provisions of the Telecommunications Act. And I understand that there's a delay between when Patrick changes the slide on his computer and when it appears on Zoom. So we appreciate everybody's patience. You know, there were 3 points that we made about this previously, and we'll just make quickly again. The Telecommunications Act says that local authorities can't unreasonably discriminate among providers of functionally equivalent services. That basically means you can't favor one wireless carrier over another. And there's been case law that says that when there's a proposed co-location, there's an existing tower with 1 carrier, and then the co-location would add some additional carriers. Denying the co-location request can unreasonably discriminate against the other providers because they're not able to participate in the market in the same way as the provider that's already there, especially when there aren't other locations in the vicinity where they can locate as here. The second provision of the Telecommunications Act that we've gone over before and that's relevant is that local authorities can't have the effect of prohibiting the provision of wireless services. And courts have interpreted that to mean in our area that if there's a coverage gap and the location of the proposed tower is the only feasible location for coverage, then denying the application can have the effect of prohibiting the provision of wireless services because no other place to enhance the coverage, and therefore wireless service is less widely available. And then the last point about the Telecommunications Act relates to an issue that came up a lot at the last hearing at the City Council meeting, which is that local governments can't regulate wireless facilities in a way that takes into account the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but that's because there's been no demonstrated negative health effect, and the FCC has determined that denying applications on that basis is not permitted. So now we're going to move on to updates with respect to this application.
Patrick, page 14 when you get there.
Thank you, Patrick. So, as we've already discussed, the proposed tower, the design for the proposed tower has been updated so that it will only be 110 feet all in, including the lightning rod, and therefore no variation is required. 110 feet complies with the existing special use permit variations for the whole property. And this is actually a shorter tower than the existing tower. The existing tower is 112 feet tall in with the antenna. The existing tower, even though the underlying ordinance requires 110, so this is actually going to be 2 feet shorter than what you've got now. And as we also discussed already, Crown has provided 2 alternative designs. One is for a monopole, and one is for a monopine, so both of those can be considered. And then we also updated the plans, and I'm not sure if this update has been distributed to the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals yet, but I'll show you a slide about it in a moment, and we'd like to formally request that those updated plans be entered into the record along with this presentation that shows that the circumference or area of the antenna arrays around the pole will not exceed the boundaries of the leased premises. There was some concern that they might encroach into other areas. So let's take a look at those. Patrick, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is slide 15. And there it is. So this slide on the left-hand side shows the existing pole, and on the right-hand side shows the proposed 110-foot monopine design. So this is similar to what you've seen before, except for 110 feet. And then the following slide shows the other alternative. So now we're on slide 16, Patrick. This slide, again, on the left-hand side shows the existing pole, 112 feet. On the right-hand side shows the monopole design, which comes in at 110 feet, as we've said. So this is sort of the second alternative for consideration. And then when we move to slide 17, we have an overhead of the site plan, and it might be a little bit hard to see on the PDF, or on the PowerPoint, but you'll see a triangle around 2 concentric circles towards the top of the site plan. The circles are the overhead of the tower pole, and the triangle around them shows graphically where the antenna mounts would be. And you can see from that triangle that the entire portion of the antenna mounts and the antennas would be within the leased premises. It would not encroach on any other property. So moving to the next slide, which is slide 18. We included this slide because at the last hearing and also at the City Council meeting, there was a lot of testimony stating misconceptions about the health effects of radio frequency emissions. And so we wanted to address that up front. And you already know that under the Telecommunications Act, that's not a valid basis for denying an application. But we also just more wanted to provide this information so that people understand the misconceptions. And you know, it's possible that we'll hear more testimony about it tonight, so we just wanted to address it. After 60 years of study, the scientific consensus is that there's no evidence that radio frequency emissions within FCC limits cause negative health effects. And this proposed tower would operate within FCC limits. We also submitted for the board's review 2 articles and a fact sheet. The 2 articles, I think, are particularly helpful in contextualizing the history of the research and showing that 1 or 2 early studies, which have since been proven to be incorrect, have continued to drive a number of misconceptions about the health effects. And so we hope that the board members had an opportunity to see those. This research is subject to continuous review by regulators and scientists. And in fact, the types of emissions that come from wireless towers is very similar to the types of emissions that come from other devices and appliances in our daily life that we use all the time and don't have second thoughts about, including light bulbs, Wi-Fi routers, baby monitors, garage door openers. And that's really one of the reasons why the Telecommunications Act prohibits disapproval based on environmental effects, because of these misconceptions. And the next slide, Patrick, slide 19, it illustrates the electromagnetic spectrum, which shows different types of radio frequency emissions emitted by common appliances and other devices. And it shows where wireless towers fall within this spectrum. So all the way on the left-hand side, you see things like microphones and televisions and radios. Then you have the wireless facility tower. And then to the right of the tower, you have cell phones, microwave ovens, and other devices, a toaster, a light bulb. And it's not until you get past the light bulb that you start to get things like X-rays. So you can see that within the spectrum of emissions, the tower is, within a range of lots of other devices that we have every day. So we hope that's helpful. Finally, we just want to move on to the next slide, Patrick, which is slide 20, and talk about the special use standards. Just to provide a little bit of an overview, the special use permit is granted to the use, and the use in this question is a wireless telecommunication facility. The City Council, by granting the previous special use permit, has already determined that the use of a wireless telecommunication facility satisfies the special use standards applicable to it. And the replacement tower does too, for a number of reasons. We'll go into it in more detail, but just to point out, it's the same land use. It's on the same property. It has the same or similar surroundings as it had when it was initially approved. The height is actually reduced. And so compared to the existing tower, when you consider it in light of the special use standards that apply, the effect of the replacement tower on surrounding property is not materially different. So we're going to go through each of the special use standards beginning on the next slide, Patrick, please, slide 21. And these are the standards that are set forth in section 5-10-9.e of the zoning code. So the first one is that the replacement tower will not be unreasonably detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. And like the existing tower, the replacement tower is not dangerous, so it will not be detrimental to the public health. There's no implication to the morals or safety. And so this requirement is satisfied just like it's satisfied with respect to the existing tower. The second standard is that the replacement tower will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the community for the purposes already permitted. And that's an important part of the standard we want to draw your attention to, for the purposes already permitted, nor diminish property value. So let's take those one at a time. We anticipate, well, at the previous hearing, people made this argument, we anticipate it may be made again, that aesthetically, the tower is unappealing to some of the neighbors, and therefore that's injurious to their use and enjoyment of their property. However, that's not really what this standard gets at. It does not affect any property owner's right or ability to use their property for the uses for which they currently use it or that are currently permitted. Anybody, if this tower is built, will be able to use their property exactly the same way as they did before. Nobody will have to leave their house. Nobody will have to change the use of their house. There's no, encroachment. There's nothing about this use that will, make it impossible for anybody to use their property. And I think that's really what this standard gets at. That's the same as the existing tower too, by the way. There's nothing about this tower that makes it more difficult or impairs anybody's right to use their property any more than the existing tower. Second is property values. And property value is always a little bit difficult because, every property is different. The factors that go into evaluating any property are various. No one factor determines the value of a property. But in general, in our experience, wireless towers don't materially affect property values. Sometimes people will be surveyed and say that, they'd rather not live near a tower as compared to not living near a tower. But overall, if you actually look at values over time, the values don't materially decrease, and any fluctuation in value is very difficult to attribute to any one thing. And it's important to point out as well that towers add value in many cases. In this day and age, where wireless connectivity is so important, and it will only become more important, having good access to coverage is really important, and people get frustrated and upset when they don't have access to it. And so, there's value that's provided by good coverage. The last thing to mention here is that because wireless services have become so ubiquitous and important to daily life, these towers are all around us already. There's no neighborhood that doesn't have a tower or an antenna array, and so if towers had this dramatic effect on property value, one would expect everybody's property values in every neighborhood to be affected by having more towers, and that simply hasn't been the case. And so we think this standard's met in a similar way. By the way, the property surrounding this tower, whatever effect on value is already baked in, because these properties already are located adjacent to a firehouse and adjacent to an existing wireless tower. And so the difference between the two is not likely to be material. Moving on to the third standard, the replacement tower will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. In this case, the surrounding area is already almost completely developed. There aren't really any sites for significant development, and so I think it's impossible for this to impede any future development, just like is true for the existing tower. Moving to the next slide, Patrick, which is 22, I believe. Thank you. Number 4 is that there have to be adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities, or they have to be provided. So the plans for the replacement tower include the installation of all of the required utilities and other related facilities that would be necessary for this project, so we're covered there. And the tower doesn't require any additional access roads, drainage, or other facilities. There's not going to be a lot of traffic in and out to this use, and so this factor is met, similar to the existing tower. The fifth standard is that ingress and egress has been designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. again, here, this is not the type of, some uses generate a lot of traffic where people are coming in and out. This use does not. The existing ingress and egress will be sufficient. This tower would not contribute to any congestion in public streets, just like the existing tower. So this standard is met. Standard 6 is that the tower conforms to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the City Council. And that last part is important too. At the last hearing of the City Council members, some people suggested that this proposed tower did not in fact comply with existing zoning regulations because of certain setbacks and other things. It's important to note that the existing special use permit variations that apply to this property will apply to this tower too. And this proposed tower complies with all of those regulations, including with respect to setbacks, including now with respect to height at the new 110 feet. And so this standard is met just like the existing tower. And then finally, the last standard is that that does not lie in a floodplain, which it doesn't, same as the existing tower. So, we respectfully submit that all of these standards have been met for a special use. So just in conclusion, last slide, thank you for everybody's patience. Page 23, the tower meets the special use standards. This is the proposed tower is the only feasible location to address coverage gaps experienced by multiple carriers in the area. The proposed tower allows for the co-location of additional carriers' antennas and avoids unreasonable discrimination between carriers. Those last 2 points are important under the Telecommunication Act. The free carrier design that's proposed here is the same design that is required by the zoning code for the reason that you don't want a proliferation of multiple towers with one antenna. You want to consolidate them as much as possible. Crown has offered 2 design options for consideration in an effort to address the concerns of the community. It's withdrawn its variation for the height variation and proposed to build the tower 110 feet, which complies with the underlying height standard and is 2 feet shorter than the existing tower. Again, another effort to address the community's concerns and be a good neighbor. And finally, approval complies with the Telecommunications Act. And so I think those are all the important points that we wanted to make tonight. We appreciate your patience as we went through them. With us today by Zoom is Travis Schenk. He is one of the people at Crown who is familiar with the design and some of the more technical aspects of the project. If any members of the board have questions of that nature, he's available to answer them, and I'm available as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Camelucci. So at this time, we will open up the floor to members of the public who wish to participate. Similar to the previous applications, if you wish to speak tonight, if you would be kind enough to put a star next to your name so we can identify, essentially a way to raise your hand. And we will get to everybody tonight that wants to speak to be certain.
Chairman Mellon, we did have one resident pre-register, Mr. Scott Lehort, 9 East Clarendon, and he did submit a PowerPoint presentation to be heard tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So I screwed up my screen here, guys. I'm sorry. Excuse me 1 second. So Patrick, if you could unmute Mr. Lehor, please. Mr. Lehor, are you? Can you hear us now?
I can.
Mr. Lehor, do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you say your name and the address for the record, please, sir?
Scott Namie Lehor, 9 East Clarendon, Prospect Heights, Illinois.
Excuse me, just for a point of clarification, do we need a motion to open the public hearing, or is it still open?
We had a motion before Mr. Camelucci spoke.
This is just the public comment. public part.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lehor, the floor is yours, and you are presenting via PowerPoint. I think Patrick is running the PowerPoint, so if you just let him know when you'd like to move from one slide to the next, that would be helpful.
I'm getting, mine's getting cut off a little bit. Would it be possible for maybe I could share my screen, or can you guys see it okay?
We can see the whole page in front of ours, Scott.
Okay. So I'll just do the best I can, because hopefully it doesn't get cut off. But I thought Mr. Catalucci did a nice job expressing kind of where we're at to this point, and I appreciate that. And it was a very professional presentation and answered some questions. This first slide is probably my biggest concern. Just for the record, we live directly behind the fire station, along with neighbors that are within 50 to 75 feet of where the existing concealed antenna structure is. I do want to make mention that the height is really not the issue. I mean, we're used to the height of where it's at. I think the biggest concern that we have is that this is an external antenna with several antennas, opposed to basically a single, what I would consider a monopole, where the antennas that I've seen that are considered communication structures, towers. There's several variances in the towers, but it looks way more drastic as an external antenna than it does in a mono. And I know that there was talk about concealed and stealth, but I just don't want that to be missed out on the board in regards to just the aesthetics of what this would look like, besides the height of things and variations. So a couple things, and I'll fly through these because I know that they've been talked about before, but as far as a hardship to actually make this happen, and I'm not sure how this became now from a variance utilizing a pole that, from what I understand, is going to be deconstructed to putting up something 20 feet away. Why these parameters of a use case still apply, where I believe that it should be an actual brand new variance, opposed to utilizing something from 1998 that wasn't intended for multi-carriers and things of that nature. So I'm a little still confused on that. Maybe after I'm done and the board or the commissioner is going to ask some of those questions. So first and foremost, as far as where are we at, Patrick? Is this the slide?
Yeah, this is the no hardship council comment slide is up on the screen, Scott.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of go through mine, and then I'll just switch because I can see it. Yours is kind of coming halfway. So as far as I'm aware, as far as hardship is a big part of it. And the Prospect Heights Fire Department, there are no safety advantages or hardship. And these were based on comments from previous meetings. They currently use Verizon Wi-Fi, so there's no need for this. I know that there's a concrete bunker issue that the proposal will not resolve because it's a concrete bunker. It doesn't affect the 911 services for cellular use, so that has no impact. And the mobile dispatch using external antennas for their vehicles, which has been satisfactory. The deputy chief has stated several times that this is a financial win, but they want to be good neighbors first and foremost. I think we've proved going through this for a year and a half that it's not something that we want in our neighborhood, or just as importantly in our downtown. Again, aesthetics purposes of what it looks like compared to, I'll call it the concealed antenna versus a communication structure. They've stated several times that if we didn't want it, that it wouldn't happen. But here we are again having these conversations. It's been voted down multiple times. And some of the comments that the councilmen have made is, if it's not going to provide any safety issues, shouldn't be in our area. Aesthetics of the proposal is dramatically different. No 911 issues, no hardship. If we continue to provide variances, it'll literally be in our residents' backyard. This will be hanging over regardless of where the current pole is now. It still has to come out, and I'm not sure how far it's going to come out, but it's going to come out at least 10 or 15 feet closer to the 50 feet that it's at. So I think that that's something to take into consideration. If we approve this approval, we'll regret it. Once it goes up, it won't come down. The intent of the original ordinance is for what's there. It was not intended for commercial use. So those are just some comments. I'd like to speak a little bit to what Mr. Catalucci said in regards to the special needs being met. This will be injurious to the use of my backyard. Yes, I can still go and throw the ball around with my kid, but I'm going to be looking at something that's going to be towering over opposed to a stick that's basically 50 feet away. I'm going to be looking at a huge communication massive tower, which that's not enjoyable to me to be able to look at that. So I believe that it is going to impair property values. We're going to look at it and say, okay, there's a stick over there, or now there's this huge structure. That is going to have an issue. And I understand and I agree that it's hard to actually try to figure out how that, numbers wise, how that works. And then if you look at the violation codes of what was proposed back in 1998 and the different variations, and you can read them there. But again, that was for a concealed antenna, not for an external antenna. This is approximately, in my opinion, from what I've seen with the designs, about 7 times the size, and really has no business being a special use. It should be a new variance, and this should be looked at from the start, not from trying to piggyback on something that's already there. And again, there's no variance, no hardship to justify this variance. As far as this being injurious to my enjoyment of the backyard, within 50 feet, it's going to loom over my backyard. My kids' play sets are back there, the trampoline. They don't notice the pole that's going up there because it's erect and it's straight up. It's basically a large toothpick. We can see it we would be able to see this from our windows, our driveways, our patios, our front yard. It would be an embarrassment for me to have people over my backyard. They're going to say, what the heck is this? Is this safe for my kids? And I know that I'm not going down the road of, whether there's radiation or whatever. We've taken that completely off the table, but people are going to have those questions. I'll probably utilize my backyard less often because I don't want to look at it. And I think it's going to be embarrassing. And that's just from my standpoint. I think it also is going to be a major detriment to the downtown. That the deli for you across the street is beautifying that. The Walgreens looks nice. The fire station for all intents and purposes looks nice. And now we're going to have this huge structure that's going to be up there that I believe is going to be an eyesore. There was some comment in the initial meetings that we had, the one that was over at Dave's Auto. People noticed that. It's not right on the corner. And literally, and this one's going to be right there where it's going to be in full view from blocks away. So I think we're minimizing the fact that, yeah, it's a monopole, or they can do the monopine, but I think we're minimizing the fact that we're not talking about a pole that's going straight up. We're talking about something that has several antennas, structures and platforms to walk on. And I think that it's important to look at pictures like we had before. And I don't know if you're catching up, Patrick. I'm going down my own thing, but here's what I was able to find as far as property values. 94% of people.
Scott,
yeah.
Hold on a second. Let them catch up. One more, Patrick, please.
I'm trying to talk fast because I know that everybody's kind of in a hurry, and we've talked through this quite a bit. So I apologize if I'm talking. I'm on slide 5.
Yes, the one with the for sale sign picture on it.
Right. Price reduced. The price reduced sign. Right. Oh, yeah, it does say for sale on it. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
The research shows that 90% of home buyers or renters will be less interested in something with a cell tower this magnitude. And I could have a price drop of 20%. I know that's hard to get somebody out here that can visualize what my valuation is on my home, and then say, okay, if you have what this picture is going to look like, it's going to be this less. But it could be 10 to 20% less value based on the monstrosity that's going back there and not just the pole that's currently there. I knew it was there when I moved in, but I didn't know that this had a potential of actually going 7 times as big and being much more dramatic than what it is. And then finally, I suggest that the proposal is not recommended by the zoning board or the council because we've gone through it multiple times. Mr. Catalucci provided some additional information in regards to coverage and things like that, but it still doesn't negate the fact that this is 50% or 50 feet from people's backyards. And I don't think that the industrial tower will represent our city in a positive way. I think it's going to be an eyesore and an embarrassment for the residents, and I think most of the people aren't aware of it. For the sense of the residents is the onus has been for us to prove that it doesn't belong in our town. And it's been pushed back and back and forth through the boards and that to try to get this thing done. The fire department said if we don't want it, then we're not going to do it, but they're not doing anything about it. And the residents are kind of getting frustrated because it continues to come up. And we feel personally that it's because of legalities that if we don't do it, then we're going to be into a courtroom, and nobody wants to fight that fight. And I feel we're being bullied by a large company. I think it comes down to money. The fire department, we pay them $4.2 million a year in our taxpayers' revenue, and this is going to gain them about $18,000 a year. And I think it's going to be a black eye on our main intersection. And I just wanted to get those points across. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lehor. Okay. Just looking at the screen here, I have a gentleman by the name of, a person by the name of Jerry. Patrick, can you unmute Jerry, please? Jerry, can you, are you here to testify to the case before us tonight?
Jerry, try *6 on your phone, please.
Patrick, could you send Jerry a chat, please, and just let him know?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. What do you want? My
Before
name?
we get started, let me swear you in tonight. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you state your name and the address for the record, please?
My name's Jerry Simmons, and my address is 101 East Clarendon.
The floor is yours. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Pat, could I ask you to put up Mr. Lehor's that first picture that where he showed the needle that exists now and the that massive cell tower that he had them side by side? I know I didn't do this in advance. I know it's a long night. I don't want to hold you guys up. So Mr. Lehor's one with the actual picture. While he's looking for it, hopefully he'll find it. Because I was just going to, the one of the, I think it was his first slide. I don't know. Just, as soon as, that perfect. So here's, satisfying does not meet satisfying special use standards. If you're just a typical, let's say you're a typical home buyer, and you have two houses. One, we could do it this way. One backs the needle, and one backs that. They're both the same price. A typical person is not going to buy that house I wouldn't think is going to back the house that backs that monstrosity to the right as you're looking at it. It just makes common sense. Just like some people will pay to back a golf course, they'll pay to back a pond or something along those lines. And I agree with the gentleman, with the lawyer, that it would be very hard to extrapolate that number because I've done projects like this, and that number is very hard to extrapolate, especially since these new monstrosity towers are something that we're seeing now. They're newer, so there hasn't been, there's not a lot of comps, let's say. But the board, just think about it, just makes sense. If you're sitting in Mr. Lehor's backyard on his bench and you're looking at the needle, which you can barely see, or you're looking at that, there's just no doubt in my mind that 100% of the buyers would buy the one with the needle. So there would be a diminished value. You just cannot, it just would be very hard to put a dollar amount to it. And I'll give the lawyer that because it really would. But I think if all the people, I don't have a vote, but I think all the people with a vote would have to agree that all things being equal, which is what, that's the sounding thing in real estate, location, location, location. All things being equal, there's no, you would have to charge less money. You would get less money to face that giant cell tower. And I just had just a couple quick points so we did this 22 years ago, and I guess it looks like it was a mistake 22 years ago. I don't know if everyone would agree with me, but now we're going to reaffirm it, which which just kind of really, to me, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me that we're reaffirming and we can come in and change this at any time based on this recertifying this now. And Dan, could any R1 apply for a special use and get this tower now once this precedent is set or reaffirmed?
Each case, Jerry, and I will take this one question and then we'll reserve the rest. Each case will be heard on its own merits, but the code does allow applicants to apply for it. And so that's the provisions that are allowed under the zoning code.
Okay. So we're kind of seems like we're opening a door there, but I just have another point there.
Jerry, we're not opening another door. The zoning ordinance is adopted by the City of Prospect Heights, give provisions for people in all districts to seek these types of approvals. So it's not creating something new. It's been there since 1977 when the city was established.
Okay. My misunderstanding. So, and the other thing I was thinking was we have the bike path. It's about 1.2 miles up the road with the high tension wires already there. It just seems to me like that would be a place where something like this would go. And like I said, I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular homeowner. I've been here forever. So, my opinion is what it is. And it does kind of sound to me like this is going to happen. And my only thing as a businessman would be why, I don't know where this $18,000 a year number came from, but that comes to like $1,500 a month or $500 a month per carrier. That seems like a joke to me. I'm hoping that someone's going to go to Crown Castle and find out what the medium income is for these towers and make sure that we're up to snuff. My guess, and it would just be a guess, would be it's 10 times this amount. Because a carrier to get a tower for $500 a month, it just sounds ridiculous to me. Seems like it should be at least 10 times that amount. That's all I wanted to say. I know it's a long day. I appreciate all you guys listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Soons. I appreciate it. I don't see anybody else that has a star on their screen, so I'm going to go through this one at a time and make sure everybody has an opportunity to be heard. Next person on my screen is Emma Heald. Patrick, if you could unmute Emma Heald, and let's check and see if she wants to speak tonight. Emma, can you unmute your computer? Would you like to speak to this case tonight?
I'm all set. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. Would you like to speak tonight?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next one on my screen, I can't see the full name, Renee Fleen, and it cuts off, so.
Nope, I'm just
Renee.
listening from Crown Castle. Thank you.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. And I understand Travis Shank is also at Crown Castle. Ms. Abrams, that you're the next one on my screen. So the next one I've got is Beta Zagorska.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. My name is actually Melanie Zagorski. I'm speaking through my mom's Zoom on behalf of my family and me.
Okay, before you get started, hang on a second. I'm sorry, Melanie. Before you get started, I need to swear you in. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Melanie Zagorski. I live on 3 Marbury Drive in Prospect Heights. To give you some context, we live across the street, going south from the location of the tower on Marbury Drive. My family moved here in, I believe, 2004. We moved here from Chicago. My parents were looking to get away from the big city and were interested in the suburban aesthetic that Prospect Heights provides. We have a really beautiful yard. It's very green. We have a garden. We love to sit outside, spend time outdoors. as kids, me and my brother played in the yard a lot. And to be completely honest, we never noticed the monopole, even though we do have a front seat view right facing towards it. It was something that it was just so unobtrusive. We never noticed it. So when we heard that there was a proposal for a new tower, we were really shocked at what it looks like. To be completely honest, both designs, both the monopine and the updated monopole, we just think I'm going to be honest with you, they're really ugly. I believe that they will impact our enjoyment of property. I can't imagine sitting out where I usually sit in our backyard and trying to enjoy the beautiful weather and really wanting to sit out there facing this thing. It's a monstrosity. It's ugly. My parents are also worried as homeowners about the value of our property. My parents invested their life savings into this house, and it would be a real shame if that got impacted by this thing. I think that no matter the case that Crown Castle makes, if they have a coverage gap, that's not our problem. As a community, that's not our problem. They have to figure out a solution, and hopefully that solution doesn't involve building this thing. I also don't appreciate how they've misrepresented the fact that this is going to be a whole new structure that they're building. I don't think that the special use ordinance should extend to a completely new structure. I think that's just crazy. I mean, this thing was allowed to be built in 1998 under completely different circumstances. And I don't think they should be allowed to piggyback off of that original special use ordinance. We, and I'm sure many of our neighbors, reject their proposal, and we really hope that they will not be allowed to build this thing. That's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. The next person I have on my screen is MJ Meyer. Patrick, if you could unmute MJ Meyer, please. Hi, MJ, are you there? MJ, are you there? Would you like to speak to this case tonight? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and mute again, please. The next one on my screen is my wife. I know she doesn't want to speak to this case, but you can. So the next person is Eric, E-R-Y-K. Patrick, if you could unmute Eric, please.
I'm not
Eric,
speaking.
This case tonight?
Not speaking.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the last person is 847-366-0939. Hello, we don't have a name for you. Would you like to speak to this case tonight?
Star 6, if you haven't, please.
They just muted themselves. They're not speaking.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. That is all of the public, the representatives of the public that are on the Zoom meeting tonight. Everybody that's indicated they would like to speak has spoken. So at this time,
do you want to rebut?
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Camalucci. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony you've heard to this point?
Thank you. Just briefly to a couple of things. First of all, the picture provided by Mr. Lahore comparing the existing antenna and the other tower. Just for the record and to make sure everybody understands, the picture of the other tower is not the tower that we are proposing. It is not a crown tower as far as I know, and, you know, appears to be sized in a manner to, in contrast with the picture of the other tower, make it look even bigger and you know, enhance the contrast. I think that, you know, if the board is interested in comparing the appearance between the existing tower and the proposed tower, the best things to look at are the slides that we provided that show the actual two-scale drawing of the existing tower next to the actual two-scale drawings of each of the design alternatives. They are different. Nobody denies that, but I don't think the contrast is nearly as severe as is suggested by this picture. And there are also ways that Crown can, mitigate some of the types of things that may be objectionable in the appearance in this photograph, but, through paint color, through building wires into the interior of the pole rather than the exterior, to conceal a lot of the things that are present here. So I just wanted to point that out for the record so that everybody understands.
Mr. Camelucci, do you know what slide number that's for scale, the two-scale drawing?
It would be page ANT1A.
That's in the plans.
Well, no, it's on. It would be slide 16, Patrick.
Yeah, I've got mine open again. So it begins on slide 15 and then goes to slide 16. 15 is a comparison of the existing tower to the monopine, and 16 is a comparison of the existing tower to the monopole. So, so that's 16, that's the monopole. So you can see the drawing of the monopole proposed, and you can see that it's much different than the photograph that was provided. The other thing I just wanted to touch on briefly, there's discussion of no hardship. Hardship is a standard that needs to be met when you are seeking a variation. We are not seeking any variations, and therefore we do not need to demonstrate hardship, so that's not relevant to this application. I think there was also a statement that the proposed tower is 7 times as big. I don't know how that was calculated, but as we discussed, this tower is actually shorter than the existing tower by 2 feet. It will have some additional antennas on it, and so in some respects the dimensions will differ. But it's 7 times bigger sounds is probably a distortion. I'm not sure how that's calculated, but not accurate. And I think that probably covers the things that I wanted to address. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Camelucci. With that being said, I'd like to open the floor to my fellow commissioners for any questions or comments they might have at this time.
This is Commissioner Patel. In our last meeting, we did have concerns on how wide this monopole would be if we did the tree or we did the pole, monopine. We still don't have any true dimensions of width. And I think that's where you're hearing the 7 times bigger or the 10 times bigger. How wide is this going to be with the rays on it and with the tree on it? And I don't see any dimensions on any of these drawings. I find it very peculiar. You guys have plenty of dimensions everywhere else, but nowhere do we have dimensions of width of the pole and the tree.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. This is Carl Camelucci. Actually, on the slides in our presentation, it's difficult to see in the PowerPoint, but these slides are also, I believe, the larger versions of the plans have also been made available to you. But for example, if you look at slide 16, which shows the monopole alternative on the right, there's a label at the bottom that says bottom of pole diameter 60 inches. And then there's a label at the top of the pole that says top diameter, man, I have trouble reading it. I think it says 22 inches. Is it 29? I didn't know. No, I think it's 22.
It's 29 inches.
We don't have dimensions.
29.
Pole. It slopes to the top, but those are the top and bottom dimensions.
That's the pole itself, right? That doesn't include the array.
Well, so the standard, so you're correct. So the antenna arrays themselves are designed by the carriers who who will lease space on the pole from Crown. So we are not able to say what the exact dimensions of the antenna arrays would be until they are finally designed by the carriers. However, for the purpose of this application and describing the dimensions to you, these drawings assume the standard 12-foot platform, and the slide on 17, which shows the overhead site plan of the tower with the triangle superimposed on top, shows the 12-foot triangle around the pole to illustrate what the dimensions of the antenna might be. Now, the exact dimensions may differ a little bit. They will not exceed these dimensions.
And when you say 12, Mr. Campbell, excuse me one second, Commissioner Patel, that is one side. It's not so it's a 12 foot by 12 foot by 12 foot isosceles triangle, right?
I believe that's correct, but I would, if Travis Schenk is on the line from Crown Castle, he is very familiar with the designs. I don't want to misstate the dimensions of the triangle. Travis, if you're there, and Patrick, you may need to unmute him. Maybe you can address that.
You need to be sworn in. Mr. Schenk, are you there?
I am. And I started my video, but not sure you can see me.
Okay. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Name is Travis Schenk, and I represent Crown Castle on this matter at 2000 Corporate Drive, Canonsburg, PA 15317.
Mr. Schenk, the question was about the size of the arrays.
Yeah, so what we did here was we actually showed the worst case scenario of what the carriers would call an azimuth. So that's just the tilt and the direction of the antennas on top of the tower. So the picture that you see in front of you, the drawing that you see in front of you, those antennas look like they're facing straight at you. If you're looking at this tower from the north.
Hey, I'm in a Zoom meeting, but I'm muted right now.
You're not muted,
Scott. You're not.
Now you are.
Sorry, Travis.
That's okay. So so basically, that's not always the case. We just kind of draw them that way. But they may be facing northeast. They may be facing southeast, south, directly east, so on and so forth, depending on the network connection that's needed there. So but what we did was superimpose that triangle, and it's a 12 by 12 isosceles triangle, as someone mentioned, and this would be the worst case scenario. So the point of that triangle is closest to that north lease area line that you see. So that could be tilted so that the isosceles triangle is not as much of an encroachment on the lease area line there. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions about that?
I do. Yeah, this is the Commissioner Patel again. So let's say worst case scenario, we do have a 12-foot by 12-foot array. And I'm looking at your lease line on this, which coincidentally is right at 6 feet from center pole to edge of your lease line. So that your arrays stay within that. Now we're talking about the arrays at the top of the antenna. If you're gonna mimic a tree, a monopine, your foliage has to be past the 12 feet. And that's at the top. As you get down the pole, your tree is going to widen.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're at 12 feet, minimally 12 feet at the top. As you come down, how do you stay within your lease line?
Yeah, so in this case, if we're going to design a monopine, if you're approving a monopine, the way that a concealed tower company like Larson Camouflage will design a tower is that the rad centers are designed within the tree branches, so that the branches do cover the antennas as best as possible. So the rad center, the mount used for a monopine is going to be different than a non-stealth tower will be designed. A non-stealth mount will be designed.
This is Commissioner Kempa. So I have a question regarding the same thing, these dimensions. It has been said that the two side views of the existing monopole and the monopine are to scale. I'd like to know what the current major diameter is of the monopole antenna, because to me it looks like it feels like the new proposed should be much bigger, even though in the picture it looks the same as existing. I'm talking the major diameter, which is the diameter at the bottom near the ground.
Travis, are you still there? Hold on, I got a text message from Travis that he dropped, his connection dropped, but he's coming back on.
I'm back on now. Looks like I'm back on.
You just came back on.
Okay.
Did I get through to answering that question before I dropped?
No, you did not, Travis. You dropped before we got the answer.
Okay.
Well,
So-
Travis, I don't know what you heard last. There was a question regarding the comparison of the two poles on slide 16, the existing pole to the monopole, and asking for the diameter of the main pole, the proposed monopole. I didn't catch which commissioner it was who was asked.
It was Commissioner Kempa.
Thank you. Should appear wider than that. I don't know if I accurately stated that's the way I.
Commissioner Kempa, if you want to restate.
Let me rephrase the question then. The diameter, the major diameter, the largest diameter of the proposed tower is 60 inches, if I heard correctly.
The diameter of the pole is 60 inches?
Of the proposed new tower, the diameter near the ground, meaning the largest diameter, is 60 inches.
No, excuse me,
Now let me pull the specs up.
label, I may have misread the label before. On the slide, in slide 16, for the monopole, I believe it says 49 inches bottom of diameter of pole.
This is Commissioner DeGraff. The monopine pole is 60 inches, 5 foot, and the tower without the pine is 49 inches. So obviously the pine is larger than the other proposed.
And they look identical on the plans. And I think Kempa's another question was, what is the original pole? What's the diameter of the one we have right now?
That was my original pole. The comparison that we're looking at on the screen right now is the existing to the proposed, and they both look the same. And my feeling is that the existing is much smaller.
It's definitely not 60 inches wide currently.
Right. It's not what it's not what it is when it's. I didn't whip out the tape measure when I looked at it, but it does not look like 60 inches.
Travis, do you know the diameter of the existing pole?
I do not no.
So, and this is where me and I think Mr. Kempa are going to agree. We had these concerns with the previous meeting. When you guys come back and don't answer the questions of how wide this tree is actually going to be, and going back to my question, if we're 12 feet at the height of the tree, as we come down, a natural tree gets wider. by a certain percentage. You're without the lease line. We don't have these dimensions, and you guys are giving us what you call scale drawings, and they're not. I mean, we're not getting true dimensions of what's existing, what's new. Your existing south elevation on ANT1 is not showing what's actually there, and therefore we can't compare the existing to the new when you're asking us to compare them. So I don't see why there can't be dimensions put on this and say, okay, the arrays are this feet wide, and when you guys say, well, the carriers are going to design them, this has been a process for over a year. No one reached out to carrier and say, hey guys, these are concerned about, our zoning board's concerned about how wide these are. Can we get an answer for this? And you guys are not giving these dimensions, which is very frustrating on my part. When you guys come back for the third time and we still have the same question. How wide is it actually going to be?
And on mine as well. I mean, we've been through this. This is why I said no originally when we voted. This was my vote. I asked that same question and I wasn't given an answer. And here we are months later and we still don't have an answer. And since we are so close, since this proposed, since this parcel is under variance, I mean, we're talking about, you know, we're essentially in people's yards. We're supposed to be 500 feet away. We're 50 feet away, and we can't find a dimension of how close we truly are.
May I?
Go ahead, Mr. Camillucci.
This is Carl Camillucci. The drawings show the dimensions of the proposed pole at both the top and the bottom for both alternatives. And the drawings also show what Travis described as the worst case scenario, meaning the largest possible dimensions of the antenna array in that overhead, which is the 12 by 12 by 12 triangle. So we believe that those dimensions were the dimensions that the board was seeking and would be sufficient for the board to understand the proposed towers in both alternatives.
So, this is Commissioner Kempa again. This is Commissioner Kempa again. I just drew this schematic the same as what you're showing now, with the larger circle being 60 inches and a tangent triangle that encompasses the circle. The sides come out to be 103 inches. Now you're saying that they're 144 inches. That means that they would protrude past the line. So I have doubts of how accurate these drawings are. They may have dimensions, but when you say that in this view that you just switched to, that these drawings are drawn to scale, I find that also misrepresented.
And the answer hasn't been given how wide this tree is actually going to be, how much foliage goes around these arrays, and how deep, once we get to as we get closer to the bottom, how wide is this tree? These were concerns brought up at the last meeting. And for them not to have those dimensions on these drawings, it's a little frustrating.
So let me try to answer the question about the foliage of the tree. So we actually can design the foliage on that one side to be less than the foliage on the other, so greater towards the street side. And we also understand the restrictions that this tree places, or the restrictions that are on this tree, really, in terms of the lot size and the lease area restrictions, especially on that north side. And so, you know, that will be really up to this board to decide what you will allow in terms of camouflage or a reduction thereof, especially in terms of the branch size. So we can design that. We can design the length of the fronds, and we can place additional fronds higher at the top to conceal where the antennas are, and reduce the length closer to the bottom so that it doesn't infringe upon area outside of the lease area. So we have dimensions, and those things do get designed, and they're typically designed very specifically to match what was approved and the conditions of approval that this board will place on it. And we design that during the building permit phase. In fact, the tower that we have designed here, the specs that we have here, will probably be reduced in size because of the height reduction that we recently, went through our group to put on for this hearing tonight. So, but it's just going to be a matter of probably a couple inches in reduction just because of the reduction of height. And we're not going to design that until we have like a general understanding of approval from the city, because there's no sense in paying for those exact designs and dimensions until we understand what you are approving.
Travis, you seem to have a little background on how to build these things. From what I understand, this is Commissioner Patel again, the original pole that we have up right now is a concealed pole. Is there no concealed poles, what we call a stealth pole, that gets us closer to what was originally approved? Then we have to go with these external arrays?
No,
I'm not sure.
Carl, do you want me to answer that, or you want to take it?
Neil, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear the last part of your question, so if you could restate that, please, that would be great.
Yeah, so Travis, is your background with building these and some engineering background on these poles?
I'm not an engineer, no.
So what is your background with these poles?
Yeah, I'm an urban planner. That's my background. I go to public hearings, mostly zoning, but I am not an engineer. I work with engineers to help us design them and get them approved. And then once they're approved in zoning, then I review them to make sure that they're in very substantial conformance to what was approved.
So do we have anyone from the applicant that can testify to if there is any type of concealed stealth pole that was the original approved intent as opposed to these external arrays that can be constructed?
Commissioner Patel, at the original public hearing, which this is still under, the RF engineer from Sprint who testified at that had indicated that that was not possible with their system. That was what was stated. For the record, I don't remember his name, but that was the testimony that was given during the original set of the public hearing.
Yeah, this is Carl Kimalucci. If the question is whether the wireless facilities proposed can be located inside of the pole rather than as an external array, my recollection of the RF engineer's testimony at the previous iteration of this public hearing is the same, which is he said that the technology has changed and the antennas no longer are capable of being housed within the pole in that way. Another thing I just wanted to mention is, it's my understanding that the depiction of the actual pine branches in the plan is illustrative. The depiction of the pole and the antennas, is dimensioned, but the final design of the pine branches depends on the final design of the antennas, which will be provided by the carriers. And as Travis was describing earlier, depending on the carrier and the orientation of their other antennas in the area and the way the signals are where the gaps are and the way the signals work together, those could be at slightly different positions, slightly different angles than, and we don't know what those positions are yet. So it's not possible to provide exact dimensions of what the pine branches would be at this time. The image is illustrative to show that the branches are designed to conceal the antennas. And that is in response to some of the aesthetic concerns that were initially expressed by members of the public and this board. So unfortunately, you know, we tried to respond to the questions and comments before by providing dimensions at the top and bottom of the pole and providing, you know, the largest possible dimensions of the arrays without being able to say specifically what those dimensions are. And we're not able to provide the exact dimensions of the pine. And that's why Travis was saying that, you know, if the project is approved for the mono pine design and we proceed to the next phase where we receive designs of the antennas from the carriers, then Crown is able to specifically design the pine branches to accommodate whatever the final design of the antennas are and can work with the city to, you know, produce a design that as much as possible addresses, you know, concerns about the branches while also accommodating the antennas. So I don't know if that helps provide a little bit more context about the dimensions of the branches themselves.
Well, this is Commissioner Kempa again. I had to beat the dead horse, but the branches are one thing. But when you state that the two proposals, the existing and the proposed, that they're drawn to scale, never mind the branches. We can go back to the previous slide. You say that they're to scale, yet you say that the diameter is 60 inches, and it looks, the 60-inch diameter of the proposed looks the same as the existing. I find that suspicious. So if we go back to the top view again, and it's simple geometry. All I did was I drew a circle that's 60 inches in diameter, and I drew a triangle that's tangent to it. That side of the triangle is only 103 inches. You are proposing 144-inch platform. If that's the case, you would be encroaching. So if we're encroaching, you know, then we're violating the variance. And for that reason, I think that we need detailed drawings because we can't be violating the variance.
Commissioner Kempa, if I could make a suggestion, this is Commissioner Mellon. If we will, to address your concerns, I think the applicant has already stated that they will consider a condition on the approval tonight that under no circumstances would the antenna array extend beyond the lease property. I think we're getting kind of bogged down on the concept of preliminary drawings, scale drawings, and undetermined dimensions from the carriers that, you know, are to be determined. But it sounds like the applicants are already stipulated that under no circumstances would that array extend beyond the leased property, which is what they're showing on the view that's up on the screen right now. Mr. Camelucci, did I misstate that in any way?
No, that's correct.
And I understand this, but after a year and a half of drawings, I think it would be appropriate to have final drawings for this review.
Mr. Camelucci, do you want to state your what you said earlier about the design of the arrays and why they're not finalized?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner, it's not possible to provide final drawings at this time, unfortunately, because we do not have the designs from the carriers. The carriers will not prepare final designs of the antennas until they know that there will be a tower on which they can put them. And so in order to get those designs from the carriers, you know, we need to be able to tell them that this tower will be available for their use. So we've provided the dimensions based on what we know as best we can. Crown is willing to commit and comply with the condition that none of the arrays will exceed the boundaries of the leased premises. And I believe that's what we can say at this time.
Right, and assuming that condition prevails with City Council, then in my opinion, it would be staff's responsibility when the final permit with the final construction drawings is provided, that it complies with the special use with the conditions that are provided herein. So I appreciate your concern and the desire to make sure that we're not agreeing to something that we don't have a full understanding of. I think that we can overcome the gaps in this if we agree to the stipulation that it doesn't extend beyond the lease boundaries. If that is in fact the recommendation that the board is asking the applicant to make, which he's already indicated to staff that they would agree to. So.
This is Commissioner Sayward. I have two concerns that I'd like to bring up. We talked about the 1998 variation special use allowed for, it was a 110 monopole or communication tower, which could hold up to 9 antennas on the interior of the pole. So this application, I think, is a totally different animal. We're going from a concealed tower to a exterior mounted with 3 antenna arrays plus the fire department. We're not replacing the same with the same. So I think that the proposed tower has a much greater visual impact and mass to it. I don't think we can compare it to the original approval from 1998. I think that if this was presented back then, they probably, I'm thinking they were going to say it wasn't appropriate in an R1 district or in our downtown area. In the comprehensive plan that was adopted by the city, it specifically says that at this location, Camp McDonald and Elmhurst Road is targeted as a focal point of our community that's going to function as a town center. So this is on page 75 of our comprehensive plan, and this is specifically for land use strategies and recommendations. Their recommendations in the comprehensive plan for this area emphasize the creation of a walkable district, pedestrian connectivity with coordinated access and consistent streetscape. So in my opinion, the proposed telecommunication tower goes against our city's comprehensive plan in that what we're trying to do in a focused town center is to make it pedestrian friendly. And this is not something that I think would be classified as pedestrian friendly. So my opinion would be that it's not in keeping with our comprehensive plan in that it's not part of the pedestrian amenities that we're looking towards putting in that area, which would challenge the standard, I guess it's number 3, for the establishment of the special use, not impeding normal and orderly development of the surrounding property uses in the district. I think in this case, it goes against what our comprehensive plan is suggesting we should be developing in this area. So those are my comments.
Just one point I want to bring up, that the public hearing is still open, and so I think it's probably important that we make sure that we're asking questions of the applicant or other people who participated. We can deliberate after the public hearing is closed. So if we could focus on questions for the applicant for the time being, and then we could deliberate after the public hearing is closed, that would be great. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, this is Commissioner Kempa again. So another question that I have is, did we explore all of the options regarding the fire station antennas? Our antennas are extremely high. I visited every single fire station between Elmhurst and Prospect Heights today, and I did not see any that would have antennas this tall. The Elmhurst station is a one-story building with antennas mounted right on top of the roof. They are about 10 feet high, so in total they, call them 25 feet above ground. Would it be feasible as one of the options to lower the communication tower to something more manageable, like 80 feet, 70, 80 feet, and then put the fire station antennas on top of the roof?
Commissioner Kempa, this is Director Peterson. Prior to the 1998 approval of a telecommunications tower, the fire district had an existing 100-foot tower for their communications purposes because that was established by design what they needed. In 1998, part of the approval, the record that we were able to find showed that they needed to maintain that 100-foot plus elevation to have their communications. Both Deputy Chief and Chief Smith have stated both on the record here and at the City Council meeting that that's the height that they need, and they have done the studies previously, but have not done them currently. So to assume that they could go to 80 feet is against what has been the history of the district and what both the chief and deputy fire chief have stated both on record to this board and at City Council. I know neither one of them are on the phone tonight, so that's why I answered this.
Okay, but I understand. I understand the answer. But I still question. How old are these studies? I mean, we're talking about an ordinance from 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we also approved, as Commissioner Sayward had mentioned, the city approved a monopole with concealed antennas, and today we're replacing the concealed antennas with external antennas. I have no experience in communication towers or in antennas. That's why I took a field trip and I went and see what's around. I see if this is normal that we're doing this, and it doesn't seem to be normal. At least based on, I went to 6 different fire stations and I did not see any that resemble what we are proposing here.
This is Carl Kimalucci. I can't speak to the fire department's needs. I believe I recall the chief testifying that they wanted it to be at about that height at the last hearing. But just for the record, a tower of something like 80 feet, as I understand it, would not work for the carriers because there needs to be a certain amount of spacing between each carrier's antenna, and at a height of something like 80 feet, they would become too compressed and there would be interference between the carriers. I believe the radio frequency engineer who testified at the first iteration of this hearing testified to that effect, and so I just wanted to restate that for the record.
So this is Commissioner Kempa again. So now I'm really confused. If the code says that the communication tower, the maximum height is 80 feet, that's by code, and we are supposed to correlate on this 80-foot tower, then how is that possible? If we can't do it in this case, if we're not even entertaining the idea of doing this.
Commissioner Kempa, this is Director Peterson. The property and the tower, existing tower, and the applicant has the right to the 110-foot that was previously granted. That stays with the land. That stays with the use. The use is not changing. So therefore, the consideration of the 80. They've already got a legal variance that was granted by the city of Prospect Heights in 1998 that runs with the land. It's not something that can just go away just because they're proposing something new. They have a right. It's just like if you had a house and you had a side yard variation and you tore down your shed, you wanted to build on the house, you don't lose your variation. Same here. This has been vetted by the city attorney at the first hearing prior to that and when we were talking about this. So
I completely understand this, but just because the variance is there, it doesn't mean that we have to take advantage of it. I mean, if the fire department wants to be good neighbors, wouldn't it make sense to explore all options and be good neighbors?
The issue is it's not the fire department's tower. It is the telecommunication tower that was approved for Gearden Telecommunications back in 1998, a leasee of the fire department's property. So we can't mix the applicants up at this time.
I don't feel that I am mixing anything. I mean, it's I'm trying to find solutions or come up with ideas, because what we're given here is we're based, we go from monopole to monopine to monopole again, and basically take it or leave it. I'm basically trying to figure out, and again, I'm not an expert on this by no means, trying to find a way to satisfy all parties involved.
Are there any other questions for the applicant, so we can go ahead and close the public hearing? Because these are more deliberations than they are questions for the applicant. If there's no other questions for the applicant, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing in this case. And then we can deliberate these questions with Director Peterson and amongst ourselves.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sayward.
I'll second.
Jen, roll call, please.
Was the second Commissioner Patel? Kempa, okay. Roll 933, roll call. Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Okay, so the public hearing portion of the case is closed for tonight. So now it would be an opportunity for myself and my fellow commissioners to deliberate this case and ask these questions amongst ourselves and try to get some clarity on the issue. I do want to do one thing before we get started. Regardless of your intended vote tonight, a yes or no, or how the vote goes, we need to make a recommendation to the City Council, one way or the other, regarding the monopine versus monopole. Now, we've heard, certainly plenty of negative comments both ways, but I would ask to take a straw poll of my fellow commissioners here. Of the two options, which option would you recommend to the City Council? This is not a vote on the special use, but because there is an application and an alternate, we need to provide City Council with some guidance on what our board would recommend. Director Peterson, is that appropriate, or do you have any concerns on that matter?
I do not have any concerns other than to remind the PZBA that previously this was a negative recommendation to the City Council for the monopine. Thus, the applicant is back here tonight to present the alternative. So please take that into consideration. So I'm just going to go through each of the commissioners here. If you would be kind enough to just offer up which of the two alternatives you would recommend to the City Council. Commissioner DeGraff.
the monopole, not the monopine.
Commissioner Kempa,
The monopine.
Commissioner Patel,
Monopine.
Commissioner Sayward.
I think the monopole is out of scale, but I think the monopine is even more out of scale. So I would have to, I would not consider a monopine.
So I can put you on the monopole side of the recommendation?
Yes.
And I too would recommend the monopole. So in a straw poll, 3-2 of the commissioners present tonight, of the two alternatives, that is the alternative that has the most interest.
So we can go for discussions from there.
Okay, so I appreciate you guys participating in that straw poll. We need to get that out of the way before we call to a vote. So now that the public hearing is complete, I want to open the floor to my fellow commissioners for deliberation or to state your position on the matter at hand tonight. And nobody's jumping in right away, so I'm going to go ahead and take it. As I look at this, and I can certainly appreciate the concerns of the residents nearby. Obviously, change can be difficult sometimes, and concerning, and the unknown, not knowing exactly how things are going to be once something has been changed can be concerning and upsetting. But that being said, my vote tonight is going to be strictly based on the application of special use. In 1998, the special use was granted for this site. It provided for a 110-foot telecommunication tower. As I read the ordinance that granted it, it did run with the land. And while the pole that was provided for was a concealed pole, the ordinance does not reference a concealed pole. There's also language in that ordinance that describes that the owner of that pole has the right to maintain it. We've heard testimony that the concealed array is no longer available, and maintenance of that sprint array would require an external array on a tower. That, coupled with the fact that our ordinance obligates the facility provider of a tower to provide the ability to carry 3 arrays. In my opinion, the application, the monopine or the monopole, conforms with the special use, and for that reason, I will be voting in favor of it.
This is Commissioner DeGraff. As far as we are meeting all the requirements of the variance that was granted back in the early 90s, and as long as it stays within the leased property, I don't feel that we have any other choice but to grant this new pole. But that's my opinion.
Well, so the application that was attached to the ordinance that was approved specifically had an exhibit, and the exhibit is exactly what's there now. So I don't know how you could say it's not different now. It's the use, yes, the use is the same. However, what was approved in 98 is totally different than what's proposed now. So I have to disagree. And since then, again, we've developed a comprehensive plan where we're targeting this area as a pedestrian-friendly town center. So I think, in my opinion, it's going against the comprehensive plan that has been adopted by the city since then.
And this is Commissioner Kempa again. And you know, as I stated before, I stated many things, I guess, but one of the last things that I stated was to try to make this work. Again, no expert here, but based on what I've seen, there are other solutions, and it would be great if you know, if they could be explored. Yes, everybody wants coverage. We all want, you know, our cell phones to work perfect. We want to be able to book our tea times from the car and all this good stuff. I've never done that, by the way. You know, it'd be great if we could you know, explore these options, which seem to be very feasible.
Yeah, I'm with Mr. I don't agree with Bruce and Scott. This original pole that was approved as a concealed pole for a reason, and for us to neglect or ignore that fact is the issue I have. There was a reason that's a concealed pole. If it wasn't approved as a concealed pole, it would have been built like every other pole that we've seen around the area. And it's approved as a concealed pole because of where it's located. For us to come back and try to use that approval to allow to get a non-concealed pole here, it doesn't go with the original approval. And it's gonna be, oh, once we see this up, okay, we didn't expect it to be this. That's my opinion. There was a reason it got approved the way it got approved originally, and I think that this does not follow those guidelines that got approved.
I think the argument that that the applicant came up with, where he's bringing it into compliance with our zoning code now by giving us the 3 arrays, if we're going to bring it into our zoning code, it should be 500 feet from residential, and it should be only 80 feet high.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
Is there any more comments or deliberations from the commissioners at this point? I have nothing more to add. Director Peterson has indicated to me he's got a few housekeeping items that he needs to make us aware of before we make a motion tonight on the application. So, Director Peterson.
For the record, we had 3 additional exhibits that were referenced tonight. The first one, which will be put into the case as PZBA case 20-02SU, exhibit number 18, the revised PowerPoint presentation that was provided on today's 7/23, showing the changes and reiterating the standards by the applicant. Secondly, there's an exhibit that was received that does have the tower plans, revision number 10, provided by Tara for Crown Castle. That will be exhibit number 19. And then exhibit number 20 is the PowerPoint presentation received on 7/23 and presented by Scott Lehor at 9 East Clarendon, Prospect Heights, for the record. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other deliberations, I'd like to receive a motion to accept into the record the exhibits as presented and amended by Director Peterson just now. to this case. So can I get a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion, Commissioner Kempa.
I'll second.
I heard Commissioner DeGraff. Jen, roll call vote.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Okay. I'm all ears.
So at this point, this is City Attorney Jim Hess. It would be up to the board procedurally to put, when this comes to a vote, there are two options before the board. The board would be best served by making a motion to take a vote with a condition of either, the recommendation, including either the monopole or monopine. I'm not here to direct the board what to do, but should the Commissioner Pro Tem feel that the straw poll is representative, for example, the Commissioner can make a recommendation to put up for vote the special use application with a condition of the monopine design, at which point the board may take a vote at that point. So at this point, I believe Commissioner Mellon can, when he's ready to receive a vote, can ask for such a motion.
Before I ask for that, though, I just want to make sure that I'm 100% clear on the recommendations already agreed to, the question of the array staying within the leased property. It was written somewhere, maybe in Mr. Camalucci's presentation. I want to make sure I state this clearly.
I believe in, you can ask counsel, however, the motion, if for the monopole option should include a condition that the antenna arrays remain within the leased area of the property. That is correct. Any commission member can put forward a motion for a vote with the condition of the style of tower, and that the style of tower also has the added condition that any element of the tower would remain within the leased premises.
So then if I could request a motion to recommend approval of case number 20-02 SU for a special use to construct a 110-foot tall telecommunications tower constructed of the monopole design with the condition that the final design of the arrays remain within the footprint of the leased property.
Also move.
Can I get to that effect?
I'm sorry, we didn't hear that.
Also move.
Commissioner Sayward, motion.
Yep.
Can I get a second?
I'll second, Commissioner Kempa.
Thank you. Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kempa.
No.
Commissioner Patel.
No.
Commissioner Saywert.
No.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye.
Motion fails 2-3. We did on monopole, which was the straw poll. That was anything else? No, unless someone wants to make a motion to vote on the other one, but, just the record be marked. So unless a commissioner would like to make a motion
for recommendation on the additional structure. If there is a motion, then the council can so vote. If not, there can be additional motion to close the, or to end the hearing on this matter.
Why don't we, just to make sure that we're perfectly clear on the record, take a motion as Attorney Hess has recommended, similar to the last one that was voted down 2-3. Could I get a motion to recommend approval of case 20-02 for a special use to construct a 110-foot tall telecommunications tower of the monopine design with the condition that the arrays, the footprint of the arrays be constructed within the footprint of the leased property.
I'll make that motion.
Is that Neil?
Yes.
I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Commissioner DeGraff. Jen, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Saywert.
No.
Commissioner DeGraff.
No.
Commissioner Patel.
No.
Commissioner Kempa.
No.
Chairman Mellon.
Yes.
This will be written up and presented to council on August 10th. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time and the opportunity today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me see where we're at in the agenda. Director Peterson, I think the next bit of business is previous application updates. Do you have any updates you wish to share with the board at this time?
No updates on previous applications. Communications. Next Thursday night, we get to meet again via Zoom for the Lexington home continuation of the special hearing. So I will get Zoom instructions out. They are already posted on the city's website under meetings and agendas. So that's coming up. Additionally, we will have a meeting on August 27th, a regular ZBA meeting. We have a couple of applications coming forward. One will be a couple actually small variations, and then the city does have a text amendment coming forward. During this COVID crisis and the governor's executive stay-at-home order, the city has received a significant increase in complaint calls, and specifically related to recreational equipment being constructed in front and side yards in violation of the ordinance. This includes everything from baseball, batting cages, to zip lines, to basketball hoops, to other issues which by our own ordinance are prohibited, even basketball hoops. So staff has looked at it and is presenting Monday night some information to the council to get direction to bring a text amendment so our approximately 20% of our properties will become compliant again. So that'll be coming, and we have the possibility of one more. So we could have 4 cases next month on the 27th. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Peterson. All right, with that being said, can I get a motion to adjourn is there specific language I have to use here?
No, just a motion to
Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Chairman Mellon.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.